Man, does it feel good to be back in the win column. We're going to talk about ASU toppling Washington State at home on Saturday night on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, Unscripted.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thanks as always for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. You can stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter. You can find me at RichieBrads36 in the podcast as well, at LO_Sun Devils. Guys, the Sun Devils snapped a 6-game losing streak. Not only that, they got their first win of the Kenny Dillingham era in terms of an FBS win, in terms of a Pac-12 win. Man, it just felt good. It really did. Like, you look at everything that this team has gone through to get to this point, and the culmination of everything just coming together, God, it makes you feel good. Like, it has taken so many frustrating losses to get to this point. You look at the Cal loss, you look at the loss to Washington, the Colorado loss. There were so many games that were decided by 2 or 3 plays that the Sun Devils just couldn't make. And in comes Washington State on a 3-game skid, and you're able to capitalize on that. You're able to feed into what's going on at Washington State, get that win. God, does that feel good? Feels so good because they executed at such a high level. They did really good on offense, right? They did a really good job defensively. We'll talk about both of them in just a moment. Special teams, better than it has been. Yes, Dario Longhetto missed a 50-yard field goal, I believe. But he made a 51-yard field goal before halftime, and he drained it. That's the kind of momentum that you need heading into halftime, is getting those points. That was huge. Kenny Dillingham said as much in his post-game press conference, was, when you're executing in all 3 phases of the game, you just gain so much confidence, you gain so much momentum. And he highlighted that field goal as one of the moments that really helped Arizona State to get to that win. Super important. Absolutely love that was one of the things he brought up. I want to talk about the offense real quick before we hop into the defensive side of the football. This was a pretty good performance by the offense, if I do say so myself. And by pretty good, I mean near flawless. Trenton Bourguet tosses 274 yards, does not give up any turnovers. All good stuff. Didn't throw a touchdown, but guess what? We scored not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5, count them, 5 rushing touchdowns, 3 of which came from DeCarlos Brooks, his first 3 of the year. A nice little hat trick. Cameron Scadaboo found himself in the end zone, and Elijah Badger also found himself in the end zone. So they ran the ball at will. 39 carries, 235 yards. 235 yards, well over 5 yards a carry. The 5 touchdowns. They dominated. Whatever they wanted to do, they did it. And they did it at a very high level. Very thrilled, very pleased with what we got to see. Because remember, I had talked about how this run game was like deceptively better than what the box score shows, because Arizona State was one of the worst teams in the Pac-12 when it came to rushing yards per game. Well, you got to see to a full effect how good this running game is, especially with DeCarlos Brooks back in the folds and like 100% healthy or damn near close to it. Like, They are getting such good production between him and Scadaboo, and they keep each other healthy. And it's like thunder and more thunder. Like these guys just absolutely enforce their will on opposing defenses. They're just brutal the way they run the football. You got to see that. Scadaboo had a season-long 66-yard run. It is the only run the Sun Devils have had this year that went for 20 or more yards. Couldn't have come in a better time in a must-win game for the team. They did a great job on the ground. Love to see how much they got Elijah Badger involved. 4 carries, 18 yards, and a touchdown. They were spoon-feeding him the ball every opportunity he got. He also had 4 catches that he turned into 60 yards. Like, he was getting all the opportunities, which is everything that I wanted for him. I've been on this Badger train for probably a year and a half, and I'm not alone. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, like, I was the first guy on Elijah Badger, because I wasn't, not even close. But I have definitely been on the train of this is wide receiver 1. This is the guy who needs a lot of carries. This is a guy who needs a lot of touches, excuse me. They're getting that done. Badger has absolutely answered the call to be the de facto number 1 option in the offense. But you've also had good production from, like, Jalen Conyers dominated this game. 4 catches, 90 yards, including a 50-yard reception that he just yanked away from the defender, threw the guy into the ground for some really good yards after contact. Like, he balled out. Troy O'Mary, that's wide receiver 2. That's wide receiver 2. He is quickly growing into his role with the team. And I put this on Twitter, and I'm going to share it with you guys. He's like one of the best kept secrets on this team. And it's like every time he touches the ball, something good happens. 4 catches, 42 yards for him, including a 30-yard long. He's got 2 touchdowns on the year. I have a feeling by the end of the season, he's going to be, I'll say, our 3rd leading receiver. The only guy that I think could usurp him would be Cameron Scadaboo, because I do think Conyers is going to start getting going, and obviously Elijah Badger. So I'm going to say O'Mary is going to end up being our 3rd leading receiver as my light goes off on the YouTube. If you're listening, obviously you're not going to notice, but neither here nor there. Offense played really well. The offensive line did a good job keeping Bourget up. I mean, there was pressure for sure, and Bourget had to navigate, but for the most part, they did a really good job. They kept him clean for the most part, didn't give up any sacks. They paved some really good running lanes. You got a lot of really good quality work done on this game against Washington State. And look, I understand it's not a great defense, but you still did a good job. That's the most important thing to take away from this, is they answered the call. Everyone on offense answered the call. They stepped up their game. They played really good, really sound football. It was the best offensive performance that they put together all year. I have said this is one of the best offensive performances that I can think of in the last few years, like probably 2 or 3 years. This was just a complete performance. I was so beyond happy with what the offense gave you against Washington State. Got to talk to you guys about our friends over at Athletic Brewing Company. Now is the time for your game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing. Much like the Carlos Brooks, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beer that actually tastes good. Look, you see what the Carlos Brooks did against Washington State. 11 carries, and he turned it into 3 touchdowns. He was running guys over, and an absolute game changer for the Sun Devils. Much like what DeCarlos Brooks did for the Sun Devils, Athletic Brewing Company is doing with the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that taste good. They're full of flavor. They're well crafted, just like a full-strength beer. And they've got over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beers, including IPAs, golden sours, and more. They're fit for all times. You can take them anywhere, make anything a more fun event. And of course, because they're non-alcoholic, there's no hangovers ever. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get 15% off of your first order. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDON, at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Also want to talk to you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the most fun that I've had this year doing daily fantasy. You can win up to 25 times your money right now, maybe even more depending on how good you are. It's really easy too. Just pick 2 or more players and an over-under on their projected stats, place your entry, and win. What do you think Saquon Barkley is going to do? 30 rushing yards, 50 rushing yards? Patrick Mahomes, how many touchdowns? 2, 3, 1? What is Lamar Jackson going to do as a runner? What is Marquise Brown going to do as a receiver? You guys get to pick, and you submit it, and then you just have some fun. It's so easy. Cannot recommend it enough. Do me a favor. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use the code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Let's go ahead and flip over to the defensive side of the football now, because they played a much better game than I think a lot of people are going to give them credit for. Look, Cameron Ward did Cameron Ward things in this game. He is a very slippery quarterback. He did everything that he could to win this game. 12 carries, 35 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. He also tossed 315 yards, completed over 60% of his passes, and a touchdown. In fact, he was a flat 70% through the air. 315, a touchdown, 3 total touchdowns. He did everything he could. And he's just slippery, man. Like, it was really tough to bring him down. The Sun Devils really struggled to find ways to be able to take him down in the pocket, out of the pocket. Like, it just tough. Like, I don't really know what else to say. It was just tough to play against him. But the defense did a good job. They ended up recording 3 sacks, 1.5 for BJ Green, 1.5 for Clayton Smith. Love that Clayton finally got his first full sack on the year. He's up to 2 now. BJ Green improves to 5.5 on the year. They played great football. The defensive line in general did really good. I know Deshaun Mallory was in for a good stop that ultimately was taken away by, I believe, a defensive holding call on Ro Torrance. I thought the secondary played okay. The problem was you just have a quarterback that is able to maneuver the pocket so well and have those off-schedule, non-scripted throws, and you have the receivers that break off their routes and just try to get open, and it was working. Like, I don't know how much of that I really pin on the secondary, because outside of that, there was a lot of stuff at the line of scrimmage. There was a lot of dump offs. There was a lot of 3-yard passes, 5-yard passes, 7-yard passes, and allowing the guys after the pass to create. And they did a good job of that. Kyle Williams, 8 catches, 77 yards. Isaiah Hamilton, 6 catches, 66 yards. Lincoln Victor, 9 catches, 51 yards. They did everything with their opportunities that they could possibly do. And you just tip your cap. Like, there's just not much you can do about it when you've got a quarterback that breaks out of the pocket and a quarterback that does so much with his legs. Like, there's only so much you can do. Defensive line played a really good football game, though. They completely controlled the line of scrimmage. They allowed 88 rushing yards on 21 carries, so a little over what Washington State was averaging on the ground. Obviously, the 2 touchdowns of Cameron Ward, but they locked everybody else up. Nakia Watson, 7 carries, 30 yards. John Mateer, who's their backup quarterback, had a single carry for 15 yards. They just bottled them up. There was not much there for Washington State to get on the ground. We did a really good job controlling the line of scrimmage, so much so that Kenny Dillingham said, if you're a defensive lineman, I can't think of a better place to play than Arizona State. And one person in particular, I really hope was watching this game. You want to play for the hometown team. You guys can guess who it is. I'm going to leave it anonymous. You know who it is. You know who it is. Bottom line, though, for a game where you allowed over 400 yards of total offense, where you gave up over 300 yards in the passing game. You didn't get any turnovers. Defense played a much better game than people realize and people will give them credit for. So I really hope that you guys actually watched the game, because if you look at the box score, it's going to be deceptive. You're going to look at it and you're going to be like, wow, Washington State went up and down the field. They really didn't, especially in the second half. Especially in the second half. That's when Arizona State really bit down and was forcing Washington State to punt the football, was forcing them into uncomfortable situations. They had to settle for field goals. They played a great game. They played an outstanding game. Best part about this, though, the Sun Devils never surrendered the lead in this game. You can't ask for much more than that. This has been an unscripted, unfiltered, raw reaction to the Sun Devils win over Washington State. What are your guys' thoughts? What did you think about the win? What were you feeling? How much do you not appreciate Pac-12 officiating? Let me know in the comments, or you can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrad36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. I appreciate you guys as always for tuning in. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Make sure that you're here tomorrow as we hand out game balls and break down the game in a little bit more detail. I'll see you then. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.